Have you been scrolling on Beam Monsters and always wanted to make a track but didn't know how? Well, I'm here to help. With my multi-year track experience, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know, start to finish, on how to make your dream track. I broke this down into 5 different steps. Starting with step 1, you need an idea. What stadium or event base do you want to use? Are you going to make a custom Anaheim or a fairgrounds track? Or even a replica track? You're going to need to know what you're going to make. Once you figure that out, you're going to head on Beam Monsters and find the stadium that you want to use. Once you find the stadium you want to use, you're going to download the file. While on Beam Monsters, you're also going to want to download Find and Replace. To do so, look underneath the categories and click on Essentials. Once there, scroll down to Find and Replace and click on it. For our last file, it'll be under the scrapyard in categories called Track Building Items. This section is going to have all your basic assets for making tracks, like blank map and props. Once you've done that, you can get to the most important part, getting the files renamed. To start this, we're going to extract our file. Press Extract All and extract. You should then have a folder of your zip file. Now you can delete the zip file. Now open Find and Replace in the folder you just made. In the folder we just made, we're going to open the levels folder and read what the next folder says. Take what that folder says and put it into Find and Replace. In this case, it's blank map v5. For our next step, we're going to click on the 3 dots next to the box on top and find our file. With this done, we can put our track name in the bottom box and press Find and eventually Replace. With that done, we can finally start changing names of our folders. First, we're going to rename the first folder after the levels folder. Then we're going to rename all of the files in the main folder, making sure that we only replace the name of the track and not underscore preview or dot terrain. Now we can go into the info.json and add the title of the track and our name to the authors. Also make sure to save the file before leaving. Now we can take the file that we downloaded for the stadium model and navigate through and find the stadium. Copy and paste it into our file. With that done, now we can go back into the file that we downloaded for the stadium, take the name and put it back into FNR. And replace in our file. With this all done, we can finally go into our Beam directory mods folder and make a folder named Unpacked. Put our file in there and load up the game. Also, don't forget to rename your folder. Loading into Beam, your file should look like this, and hopefully the map looks something like this. If so, then you made it through step 1. But let's get into step 2. We gotta get started on World Edit. Wait, there we go. To get started, we're going to load in and press F11. This opens the world editor, how we're going to make our track. One problem though, the way the world editor is now is garbage. To fix this, we're going to add some new windows. First, we're going to add Asset Browser. Click on Window on the top and Asset Browser. Then you can drag the window next to your scene tree. Next, we're going to add Material Editor. Click on Window again and then find Material Editor. Click on it and drag the window on the right side of your screen next to Inspector. With that done, we can finally get to work on our construction. Wait, hold on. Now we're ready. Let's get started. First, let's start by finding our ramps. Open up the art folder in shapes, go to the ramp pack and choose a ramp to spawn in. From this point on, make sure to save after every change. Now let's turn our mesh into an actual dirt ramp. Start by scaling and moving the ramp around where needed. By clicking on the ramp, that brings up an axis of which you can move the ramp around with. To scale the ramp, click on the scale button on the toolbar. Then you can use the axis to scale it as needed. Click on the translate button on the toolbar to bring back our moving axis. You can also click on the rotate tool to rotate the ramp as needed. To turn our mesh into dirt, we're going to click on terrain tools on the toolbar and click align with mesh. Then when you click and hold, you should see the dirt raised to your mesh. Make sure you hold it over all parts of the ramp. You can then click on object select and hide the mesh. Then make sure to save. Once you've done that, you have your first dirt ramp. Once you feel comfortable with these controls, we can then bring in our stadium model. In our asset browser, we're going to use the 3 dots to go back and find our stadium model. In the folder, find the .dae file and double click to spawn the stadium. At this point, when you're comfortable, you can go ahead and make your track out of all your meshes. Note that some stadium models you will have to hide when making ramps and raising the mesh. Now we're going to put all of our ramps into a group. First, open up your scene tree, then use Control or Shift to select all of your ramps. Then you can right click on the ramps and push Add to Group. You can also go ahead and name that folder Ramps. When making ramps, you may have ramps that look like this. I'm going to show you how I fix it. First, we're going to find the Set Height tool, and then use the Terrain Picker. Use the picker on our flat point to use that height. Then go ahead and turn our brush into a box. You can then connect our two ramps with a flat point. Now let's smooth that ramp out. Start by turning our brush into a circle again. Then you can go ahead and click on the Really Smooth option with the settings I have selected. Then go ahead and move across the ramp in a really straight motion. And also smooth out your other ramps while you're at it. Then you can go ahead and take away the sharp edge on the rest of your ramps. Do that by tapping the Really Smooth option in a straight line. Once you've got all your ramps made and you feel like you're ready, we're going to put some chalk and paint on them. First, start by opening the Decal Road Editor. For chalk lines, we're going to set our width to 0.588. Then hold Alt and left click to set your first point and click again for your second. Then we're going to add a chalk material. On the right side, you'll see material. Click the three dots and search for chalk. Double click the chalk and then a chalk material will appear. Add a start and end fade of a value of 1 to 3. Then we can start moving our chalk line around using the dots and pulling. Now we're going to make the line perfectly straight. Clicking on one of the nodes and using node properties, we're going to copy one of the values and click on the other node, and that should make the line straight. Now that our line is straight, we can move it to how we need. Here's a little time lapse of me finishing up the chalk lines. Once you've got your ramp boxed off, we're going to add paint. To add paint, go to the Terrain Painter in Terrain Tools. Pick a color of paint and start painting away. Here's another little time lapse of me finishing up the paint. We're now on step 3. Now let's get into decals. Before we start, you need to figure out which kind of decals you want to use. Are you going to use the Sea Wookie style, or my style, or make up your own? You're going to have to figure out what kind of dirt wear marks we're going to use. Once you've figured it out, we're going to have to import it into our unpacked mods folder. You can do that by unpacking your example, taking the files out, putting them in your file, and renaming the files. Now that we have the files in our game, we're going to figure out how to use them. For this example, we're going to use my assets because I know how to use them. Any other assets should have the same concept though. Let's get into it. My style has 3 different layers. On top is Dirt Road Flows. Second is Dirt Road Top. On the bottom is Track Asset 1. Now that we know that, let's get back into Beam. Back into Beam, we're going to open up the Decal Road Editor and set our node width to 8. Then set our material to Track Asset 1. We're making 3 of these so we can duplicate them as needed. Setting the second asset's material to Dirt Road Top. And setting the third one to Dirt Road Flows. Now let's sort out the values of each material. For Track Asset 1, we're going to set the texture length to 8. For Dirt Road Top, we're going to set it to 30. And finally, for Dirt Road Flows, it's also going to be 30. Moving them out of the way real quick. On Track Asset 1, we're going to use a start end fade of 10. On Dirt Road Top, we're going to use a 5. And on Dirt Road Flows, use a 15. Now we can get to applying our decals. Starting with Track Asset 1. Now if you remember, this is going to be on the bottom layer. On your track, you'll use these everywhere. For now, for example, I'm just going to use a small spot. If you want a track to use as an example, you can use New Orleans 2010 Custom. There is a link in the description provided. Using Track Asset 1, we're just going to plaster the ground anywhere our truck would drive, making sure that any decals that are overlapping have different render priorities to avoid glitching like this. You may also notice when changing render priorities, other decals might disappear. Just undo and redo to fix this. Now I'm going to finish up my track asset once. Once you have those everywhere, we can start on our road dirt tops. Make sure that some of our road dirt tops are on top of the track asset 1, but also some are under. Don't add too many of these. When you're done with road dirt tops, it should look something like this. Now onto our road dirt flows. We're going to put these on top of everything we have with a higher render priority, leaving windows for our track asset 1s and dirt road tops to show through. Remembering that overlapping materials will need a different render priority. In the end, it should look something like this. Now we can start working on our ramp decals. Start by making a 6th width road, then adding a track asset 2 material. Also at this point, you should go into your scene tree, search chalk, and set all of your chalk's render priorities to 100. Now go ahead and start working the decal onto our ramp. And setting our fade to about 1 to 3. It depends on how your ramp is looking. I end up using a fade of 1. Now I'm going to duplicate this and move it up the ramp. Making sure that our dark decal edges are blended. I'm now duplicating it again for the long end of our ramp. For longer ramps, I like to switch the material back to track asset 1. Also making sure to adjust the start end fade. I end up changing it to 10 on one end and 5 on the other. I also like to add decals on the side of the jumps for trucks that may have hit it awkward. If you decide to do this, you can make adjustments as needed. Now we can grab our dirt road top. Making sure that the render priority is underneath of our track assets, we're going to move it across the ramp and duplicate it. This adds spots where dirt may have splattered across the ramp. When you're done, it should look like this. Now grabbing our dirt road flows again, we're going to very lightly add them on top of the ramps. On this ramp though, I don't feel like it's needed, so I skip this option. I use them in flat low points to simulate dirt that has rolled down, like I did here on my New Orleans 2010 custom. I'm now finishing up the decals on my ramp, and when it's done it should look something like this. Now that we're finally done with our ramps and our track decals, we can finally get this wrapped up. Now we're moving on to step 4, finishing details. You may have noticed that our stadium leaves a lot to be desired. Let's fix it. Starting by adding a crowd sound. Since Blank Map doesn't have a sounds folder and an art folder, we'll have to add it. Take it from another track and add the sounds folder to the art folder of our track. Now go back into Beam and open World Editor. First we're going to click create an object and create sound emitter, and click on the ground. Then select the sound emitter and turn off is 3D. Then click on file name, levels, your track name, art, and finally crowd loop. Now it's still a little dark in here. Let's add some lights. First, we're going to create another object, this time a spotlight. Then select it and set a range of 150. Then determine an outer range. In this example, I use 150, and an inner range should be 10 less than your outer range. Then you're going to move the light to the middle of the stadium and point it downward. It is now at this point too that you can add cast shadows to your light, though I would only do a few due to FPS reasons. Then I duplicate my lights and move them around the stadium. Make sure that you only have 6 to 8 lights, you don't want to have too many. Now we need to update our stadium to match. First we're going to go back into the files and we're going to find our stadium model and edit all the textures. For this step I use paint.net, but that's going to be totally personal. For this example I'm going to do basic changes. You can do more complex changes though. Now we're finally on the final step, step 5. Now that we have our definitely very beautiful track, we need to pack it. First, we got to cut down this file size. To do that, we're going to delete any unused assets, such as shapes, decals, terrain paints, and such. Here's a quick time lapse of me doing that. Next, we have to update the file in our unpacked folder. To do this, we're going to open up 2 windows of File Manager, one with our Beam directory and the other with our mods. In the Beam directory, we want to open the levels folder and find our file and open that as well. Then we're going to copy everything except the art folder and overwrite it in our other file. Then after you've got that replaced, you can go ahead and drag your art folder over as well, also making sure that you can replace it. To pack the track for upload, we're going to pack the levels folder and name it the name of our track. The file's final size ends up being 246 megabytes. With that, we're finally done with our track. I really hope you guys found this tutorial somewhat helpful. This video is by far the hardest video I've made before, and I put so much effort into it, and I really would appreciate it if you guys would like or subscribe. This is also my first time using Premiere Pro, so I hope you guys liked the editing and found it funny. If you guys still need more help with other things with track making, let me know videos I should make in the comments, or you can tune into my live streams where I'll be making tracks. You can also hit me up on Discord with this Discord @ So I hope you guys found this video funny, and I'm going to get back to track making. So I'll talk to you guys later. Goodbye.